This is computer generated chess problem 00687 by Chesthetica. Now here white is down by about a knight, yet there is a move that allows white to win. Interestingly, the bishop on h8 is in a position to be captured with a promotion by the pawn on g7, and the white rook on e2 is also in a position to be captured by the king or the queen. So I'll now show you the solution to this problem. So the winning move is actually rook to c2. But let's take a look first at why other more obvious moves don't win or basically lead to a draw. So for example, what if white were to play g captures h8, promoting to a queen? Well, then he would lose to queen captures e2 check, maybe king to h3, and then queen to f3 check. Can delay the mate just by one move, followed by queen captures g3 mate. So that's not a good idea. You can see how the same thing would happen if white were to play queen captures g7. Checkmate would also ensue very quickly, in fact faster, with queen to h4 mate. So strangely, the two pieces, the rook and the bishop on g8 and h8 respectively, are not under threat. But what if white were to play something else, for example, rook to a2, threatening the knight on a7? Well, then this is also a draw, because after queen to g1, check, king has to move to h3, queen to e3 check, king to h2. Note that the king cannot move off the h file to, let's say, the g file, because if that would happen, then we can have rook captures g7, winning the queen. So the king has to stay on the h file. Let's say king to h4, and we have got queen to e1 check. It's basically a perpetual check. And then if bishop, let's say, to g3, then we've got queen to e7 check. And if king to h5, queen to c5 check. And if the king were to move up to h6, this would be a problem, because bishop captures g7, winning the queen. So the king has to move back down to h4, and again we've got queen to e7 check, king to h3, queen to e6 check, and then king to h4. Then the queen could capture a2, and then white can proceed with a perpetual check after queen to d3, and maybe queen to e2, queen to e5 check, maybe king to g2, queen to d5, king to g1, queen to c5, king to f1, queen to f5. So then white can turn the tables and do a perpetual check. So going back to the original position, why does rook to c2 win? Because now, after queen to g1 check, king to h3, if for example here black plays queen to e3, white can move the bishop to g3, and then after queen to e6 check, notice how the rook is no longer on a2, king moves to h2, and there are no more checks. And here, if black were to make a move like queen to d7, then we have rook to c1 check, king to e2, queen to e4 check, with mate to follow very soon, king to d2, and bishop to f4. So basically the idea here is that white is able to escape the continuous series of checks, and the rook on c2 facilitates a checkmate if black plays poorly. So here black has got no choice but to lose the queen, because queen to e2 check, rook captures e2, king captures e2, and mate will soon follow with queen to e4, king to d1, queen to d3, and so forth. So in this position, the correct move is quite difficult to see, especially if you don't have much experience with this type of position, or you are an intermediate or beginner. Rook to c2. Here black must play queen to g1, otherwise mate is imminent, and then king to h3, and again to avoid mate black has to play queen to h1, and here white can play bishop to h2, and after queen to f3 check, bishop to g3, and here if black were to play queen to h1 again, then white could play rook to h2, and black is in trouble. And of course, if white were to do something else entirely, for example, maybe rook e7, well then black will win immediately with queen to g2. This is why black not only has to move the rook to c2, but he has to keep it on the second rank to prevent queen to g2 mate. So a fairly complicated or complex position. Thanks for watching.